Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 12th and final round.
Right hand, Golovkin steps in and down he goes again. Unbelievable. Mayweather makes a pay. What a rookie mistake. A sensational left hook by De La Hoya.
It's fact. I'm the best. You know what I mean? Sometimes I don't want to believe it myself, but it's the truth. I'm the best.
I'm going to show you how great I am.
From Southern California, this is the Last Round Podcast.
Welcome back to episode 169 of the Last Round Podcast. Thank you again for joining us, whether you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you're at, however you're listening. We definitely appreciate it. And he's back for the second time here on the Last Round Podcast. He was with us maybe within the last month or so, maybe a little over a month ago, in his first guest spot with us here on the Last Round. He talked about his recent move to the United States, specifically to Las Vegas. And then he also just came from his first trip to Los Angeles, Southern California, where he got a lot of work done in terms of boxing, visiting gyms, going to shows. Obviously he'll expand about that on that. The Insider's Al Dawson joins us again here on the Last Round. Thank you for joining us, Al.
Thanks for having me back on, Dan.
We appreciate it. So, like I just talked about, before we kind of jump into our reviews and previews and normal agenda here on the show, you had your first trip to LA. Essentially, you went to the DAZN car with Rocha-Cobbs, which was supposed to be the Ortiz McKinson main event. You also went to the 360 show in Montebello, California. You went to a couple of gyms, some different spots. Tell us your experience.
Yeah, so that's actually the furthest west I've ever been in my life. So kind of thinking as when I was on Venice Beach, I don't think I'd ever put my feet in the Pacific Ocean before. And the weather was just amazing. It's kind of everything you think of when you're thinking of Los Angeles as a Brit, it is all true. It's even the good and the bad. I was kind of shocked at the level of homelessness, but it's kind of like a conversation with something else. But with regards to boxing, you kind of just spoiled for choice with fighters and coaches. I feel like the difference with Vegas and why I'm positioned here is that there's just events every single weekend, but it feels like in Los Angeles, I spoke to Freddie Roach, I spoke to Jose Salcido, two of the top boxing coaches in the world, really, and they're both positioned, right there in Los Angeles. I didn't actually get to go to the wild card. I spoke to Freddie at Golden Boy HQ. And again, I'd never even been there in my life. I didn't know Golden Boy, I kind of knew they were in Los Angeles, but I didn't know they were like, they've got this building in downtown LA. You walk in and it's just such a flex of Oscar De La Hoya and Golden Boy to have this marble, straight through the door as you go in there, and he's got his logo right there.
He owns that whole building. Yeah,
that blows my mind. Because how much is that worth?
Exactly. Yeah,
and that's why it's such a good flex. And the room that they've got there for the where we had the press conference was pretty cool. It was on the ground floor and full of glass, so you could see out towards downtown LA, which has just got this completely different vibe to where I was staying in Santa Monica. And then, a far drive, like I drove an hour and a half in the classic LA traffic to go to Montebello for Tom Leffler's show. And Montebello it was like in this country club golf course that was pretty nice. But yeah, it was just quite cool to go around different pockets of Los Angeles and just see, how different each of these areas are. So to start with, the first thing I did was checked out West Side Boxing Club, and just this cool, I'm not big on comic books, but they reminded me of, I think it's the Punisher, like their emblem. It's kind of like a skull. And I walked in, and straight away, Jose, I think I walked in at about 11 in the morning, and I hadn't told anyone I was going to go in. I was just kind of driving through, and I thought, I'll just stop in and see if anyone's there. And Jose Salcido was literally on the edge of the ring apron, overseeing a sparring session. I kind of said who I was, and he shook my hand, and Gabe Rivas was incidentally there, kind of introduced me. We had a little interview, talked about Ryan Garcia. Basically the West Side's got this relationship with Golden Boy where they have their, they might do open workouts there. So Jose has seen, people like Saul Canelo Alvarez come in when Canelo was like this baby-faced, shy, I'm kind of guessing, but 12, 13-year-old boy who was, coming up in the sport ages ago, and seen him develop into who he is today. So we kind of talked about that evolution. in terms of style, and also, not just developing in terms of a fighter, but developing in terms of a man and who he is and things like that. Talked about Ryan Garcia. He was telling me about one of his fighters who was on the card, Alejandro Reyes. So I saw him box on the Saturday, and got like a good little breakdown of him from there. Really gracious with his time, cool guy. And then on Wednesday, I spoke to Tom Leffler. So I didn't even know he's got an office in Gold's Gym. The backstory to why he's there is, awesome. This guy that's, how in there he must have been with like the legendary weightlifting guys and the head office of Gold's to like for them to say, do you want to move into our office? And in my head, that's kind of how Vladimir Klitschko and Arnold Schwarzenegger probably became pally, because of maybe they saw each other there. I spoke to Tom for about half an hour the day before his show, and he was telling me about, I haven't written this yet, but he was telling me about the Klitschkos and what they're doing in the Ukraine, Ukraine. It kind of winds me up when people say the Ukraine. There's no the, people. It's just Ukraine. And then I said it myself. So we're talking about that, and then his show. And one of the reasons why I wanted to see his show is because, I think I mentioned on this show before, I want to see like the new gen coming through. That kind of really excites me about how it just goes against the, we keep on seeing these flaming shit takes about boxing's dead, and it's not. There are so many talented people under the age of 25 going even to like one guy I've got my eye on, Jalil Hackett, who's in DC. He's just got a fight booked for April 9th. I think it's his third fight. These guys, they're like not even on the cusp of being a prospect yet. They've just turned pro, but then you've got like a load of them who could, become really good prospects. You've got the prospects that are now developing into good contenders, and there's just so many of them. Virgil Ortiz, who, that was kind of one of the reasons I wanted to see last weekend, but he wasn't even on the show in the end, and it was still an amazing week. So I wanted to see Tom Leffler's show because I knew there were quite a few prospects there, and so I turned up and saw the whole card. And this is another thing I love about West Coast and Southwest boxing. You finish at 9:30 in the evening. At 10 o'clock at night, you're home by like 10:30. That doesn't happen in London. It finishes at like 12:30, gone midnight. The last train's gone. You have to kind of walk to some random bus stop to then get the night bus, which takes you, all this sort of up and down and around the houses until you're eventually walking through your front door at 3 a.m. It's a nightmare sometimes covering boxing in London. There was one guy that I didn't expect to be blown away by. I hadn't heard of him before. Eric Priest. Have you guys heard of this guy? So I think he was 6-0 before. And he just bullied the hell out of his opponent for like 30 seconds. And I was just thinking, God, I would not want to be that guy. There's no way he's not waking up. So this show was on Thursday. There's no way he was waking up Friday morning. And if he's got a girlfriend or a partner and they went to hug him, he would be cursing his breed. Damn you, Eric Priest. So that was a horrible bludgeoning. It's just like, just completely overpowered him. You could question the matchmaking, but sometimes when you've got prospects that are just out to kind of put a hurt on someone, what can you really do? And then there was this guy called Callum Walsh. So Tom Leffler was telling me the day before that the whole card was basically built with Callum Walsh in mind, who had only ever had one fight as a pro. He had 65 amateur fights. And he's already in just one pro fight. He's already got he's trained by Freddie Roach at Wildcard. He's obviously repped by Tom Leffler. He's, got Gennady Golovkin and the Klitschkos and Kevin Kelly in his, history books. He's got the praise of UFC boss Dana White. He's signed an agreement with Dana White's whiskey. I think it's Dana White's whiskey company, Howlerhead. So he's got friends in high places, and he's only had one fight. And I think he's a teenager. So I was curious about what he was going to be like. And he knocked his guy out. It wasn't a knockout, sorry. It was like a first round stoppage, like a referee stoppage. It was more like, the guy wasn't unconscious. So to me, that's not a knockout, but it was a finish quite early. And he looked pissed off, that he couldn't even, get, even one full round of work in. But he had there was a good crowd there. I think Tom was saying after the event, there was 1,600, 1,700 people there for, considering this is, from my point of view, I'd never known where that was, Montebello, never even heard of this place. But there was some good food there. There was like these fairy lights. It was all done up really nice. There was these fairy lights. There was a DJ that was playing Ramones on and off all night. So it had quite a good vibe. And then as soon as Callum Walsh came on, he's a teenager and only had one pro fight, and there's people there that are just going crazy for him. This is the power of Irish fight fans, and I'm not sure if they're like American Irish or if they've come over from Ireland, but either way, he had a good, if that's what you're getting in just one pro fight, it feels like he can develop into something more. So as he went off and changed into this Larry in your face sort of shamrock suit, to the St. Patrick's Day. And then he was there, having a drink. I'm not sure if it was alcohol or not, but he was there, socializing with pretty much everyone there afterwards. I spoke to him and he seemed, he seems good. So I was asking him about, following in the footsteps of Ireland's great fighters at the moment. Obviously in my head, Conor McGregor, Katie Taylor. And
Jason Quigley.
Yeah. And I was just thinking, what are you going to say? What was he going to say? And he was just like, yeah, I'm here to take over as well. So he's really ready to sort of, do it all. And, Freddie Roach seems like he's, he was quite specific in his wording to me. I think he didn't say the word baby, but, he's getting at that sort of very embryonic, he's just starting out, but he was saying, he's ready, he'll be ready too. And that he doesn't fight like a 2-fight novice. He fights like a, 20-fight guy. And it's because he's had all these amateur bouts and, he's apparently, from what I haven't seen him spar, but according to Freddie Roach, the way he handles sparring is a sight to behold for someone who's seemingly so young. So I really enjoyed being around that sort of environment on the Thursday, and then Friday and Saturday it was really all about Golden Boy. So
did you see much difference in? Obviously, you didn't go to Wildcard, but did you see much difference in the gyms so far between the UK and the US?
The thing, the gym that I know the most in London's the Peacock Gym, and it does seem quite. The Peacock Gym's really big. To be fair, I don't think many gyms in London are that big because it's got at least 3 full-size boxing rings, which can take up a lot of space. And I don't even think it's actually there anymore. I think it was a real big part of the community in Canning Town, which is where Danny Dyer's from. This might be a bit of a niche reference, but Danny Dyer, for anyone who's not like British or knows British culture, is quite like an in-your-face. East End Cockney. People think he's a caricature, but he's not. He is genuinely like that. And Canning Town is filled with people who are like Danny Dyer, just these, very thick Cockney accents, but quite funny in my opinion. The people at that gym were good people.
Green Street, right? Is in Green Street, right?
It's quite similar, yeah. So I think Green Street might be like E3 or around like West Ham. So this is a little bit.
I mean, the movie using Green Street, the movie, right?
Oh, Danny Dyer. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, for people that.
Yeah.
For our American listeners.
Yeah, and Football Factory, but again, that might be a bit niche. So the similarity was like Peacock Gym was always quite not rusty, but it was very old equipment. And whenever I'd go in for a shower there, I'd always I'd feel dirtier than when I went in, if that makes sense. And I feel like Westside is quite, but that's part of boxing's charm, I think. These inner city gyms. Westside struck me as quite similar to Peacock, and I loved Peacock Gym.
The smell of sweat.
Yeah, or just where men are going to work. That's what it is, isn't it? It's just like you don't need. Well, maybe you do need the modern equipment depending on who you are, but a lot of the time, all you need is a ring that can support, that has the right, sponginess or whatever. And you need like your wrist wraps and your gloves, and that's really all you need. And then you need someone who's around the similar sort of size and weight as you, and then a coach who's got both of those people's interests. To sort of do some body sparring and then see how you get on. But yeah, I mean, Jose did remind me of like the people you have in London who are quite like welcoming, and he's really welcoming in his gym, and I'm sure we're going to speak again and again. But in terms of like. I mean, it's just different as well because like a lot of the people in the West Side gym were, to me like Mexican and Mexican American, and in London you don't really see that nationality as much. It would be white English and Black British, and those are the people you're mainly seeing in the gym, and maybe a few like there's sometimes Italians in the Peacock gym. So that would be the main similarities and differences. But I mean, what would unite them is just, old school, good, solid trainers and, welcoming and just good attitudes. I think I really liked Jose's attitude and his, just how welcoming it was considering me and him had never even spoken before. And I was literally dropping in. I think I might have emailed, but you never really know who you're emailing when it's just like an info@Westside Boxing Club or whatever the email is. But yeah, that was the experience of Westside. Just good gym, one full-sized ring, some heavy bags, and just good guys going to work. And then so the Friday and the Saturday was all about Golden Boy. Who did I meet? Met Freddie Roach, which was, that's the first time in my life I've ever been with Freddie Roach. So that was quite.
Yeah, I think you tweeted about it, right? That you were kind of like starstruck in a sense.
Yeah, I think it's because like growing up not growing up. I'm not talking about when I was like 15. I mean, growing up as a reporter in boxing, I was quite gutted that I missed out on the Pacquiao and Mayweather era. Never reported on any live Pacquiao or Mayweather fight. But for Freddie Roach, he was so significant in that era. That was like such a thriving era for boxing, and he was there at Manny Pacquiao's side every step of the way, and he's trained other guys who have come through the gym as champions, other guys who he's made champions. He's I can't remember how many awards he's won with the Boxing Writers Association of America. I want to say at least 6, but it's probably more than that. So like what he's done in the sports, can't knock it, especially as like to do that while he's living with Parkinson's. It's amazing, really. So he was cool. Spoke to him for about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, mainly about Blair-Cobbs and Callum Walsh, just the guys that we were kind of talking, that were there for that fight week. Callum Walsh on the 360 show and Blair-Cobbs on the Golden Boy show. Spoke about Klitschko and Postol as well, just because they're kind of in the news for our website. But I kind of wanted to speak to him about so there's Blair the Flair and there's Blair-Cobbs, right? And Blair the Flair will walk into a room, and it doesn't matter how many people are in the room, and he'll just woo, and he'll say, the champ is here as loud as he can, and he just brings. Some people hate that. I quite like it because it's you don't get a lot of people like that, but occasionally you do get people in that kind of command the attention of the entire room, and from a writer's point of view, I'm kind of drawn to that as well, to have different sort of personalities. I think it'd be boring if we were all the same. But yeah, he talked a good game and you can't really knock it. But I kind of wanted to get into like Blair the Cobbs as well. So, but from what Freddie Roach was saying, he does woo all the time in Wildcard as well, even when the cameras aren't there. He's a talker, and chats a lot of, shit and stuff. But yeah, when I spoke to Blair, he was quite like open about, I was just asking, considering his backstory, where his dad was on the run from the FBI in Guadalajara and Blair was there. And then I think when his dad got caught, Blair went to New York, and I think he then went to maybe back to Philadelphia. And I think when he was turning pro, he suffered like quite severe poverty. So to go from all of this and to live the life that he's lived, I was kind of asking, how can anything in boxing really phase you when you've already been through that sort of stuff? So he was saying there's nothing really that boxing can, that no fighter or nothing in boxing can really, phase me. So I said, is there anything in life that can? And that's when I think Blair the Flair dropped, and then Blair-Cobbs kind of came through, and he's talking about like inequality between cultures, and he was talking about wars that were going on that kind of, maybe not, he didn't use the word freak him out, but like he was listing things that obviously were playing on his mind. So it was quite good to get a little bit of the human side of him rather than just the caricature.
Right.
And Alexis Rocha, and again, it's just a complete contrast to Alexis Rocha, who's really chilled, kind of like really good guy, quite like vibed with him. Feel like, when he talks to you, it kind of makes eye contact. He's really like, quite invested in like you and interacting. It's quite, a lot of people aren't like that. He's I don't know what the right word for that is, but he's definitely got something about him where he can hold a conversation well with whoever. And, he's been around, sparring partners. He's definitely usually sparred Josh Taylor, he sparred Manny Pacquiao. He's, maybe he's picked up a few things along the way through that. But the one thing, sometimes in boxing, the sport is so bogged down in protecting your O or your zero and staying unbeaten. And in MMA, it's just not an issue at all. Like, look at Jorge Masvidal. How many fights has he lost? And he still gets, big fight after big fight.
Right.
Maybe not like, what would be the right word? Maybe not like fights that are meaningful in the landscape of the actual sport, but they're big fights in terms of that they can be built up as like, you know, like the Colby Covington rivalry. Whereas in boxing, you just need to get rid of the zero, especially with what Alexis Rocha was saying, is that he was suddenly became unencumbered by the pressure of having the zero, that he'd lost it, and that his biggest learning was just to, whoever you're being in front of, just to keep letting your hands go, you know, and not be too gun shy. I don't think he was gun shy in the Cobbs fight. Even at the start, he kind of said post fight in a journalist scrum that he felt like he was, but to me, it felt like he was just. You know, like if you're in a 10-round fight, and if you're a fight, you probably feel like you've got like, say, 100% of your energy tank, and you want to just like you know, get rid of 10% every round or something. You want to make sure you've got something reserved there. It felt like his reserves were more. It felt to me, watching, that he stepped it up in the 5th round for sure. I feel like he wobbled him, so he was hitting him with good shots, definitely in the midway point. In the 7th, it felt like he stepped it up again. He knocked him down in the 8th round, and then, you know, stopped the show in the 9th. And I felt like if it could have gone on for round after round, or if he had a different opponent, I feel like he could have probably gone a different level as well. And just the sheer amount of fans that he had there, like Virgil Ortiz. This was supposed to be the Virgil Ortiz show, right, against McKinson from England. And so the first email I saw, or the first tweet I saw, I can't remember if it was a tweet or email, when I got to Los Angeles after a 5-hour drive, was like, you know, Ortiz has been in hospital. I was like, fuck. So, like, you know, how could they really save that show? I really feel like Alexis Rocha saved it. You know, Blair Cobbs talked it up and built up the promotion, but the person who saved it, I think, was Alexis Rocha, just because the fans he had there, they really came out for him, man. There was at least 5,000-6,000 people in there. I think the Galen Arena is maybe 10,000 seat arena.
Just about, yeah.
So it was definitely more than half full, and they were loud. You know, they were having a good time. There was only one fight I saw in the crowd, but other than that, it was, you know, that's just standard boxing stuff. But yeah, he's got fans, and if he carries on fighting the way he's fighting, if he carries on winning the way he's winning, or the way he did on Saturday, he's a really interesting guy in the division. I definitely want to see him again. I think I would travel to see him again. I definitely want to speak to him on Zoom and hook up with him like we did during fight week, because I feel like he can offer a lot at 147, and they're talking about matching him now with McKinson, who, I mean, he was offered so many replacement opponents, and from what I was hearing, he was just saying yes to every single one. There was that guy that had lost like 8 of his last 9 fights and hadn't fought since 3 years ago. Said yes to him, but he wasn't approved. And then the person, you know, so he was just saying he would fight anyone. I don't know if Rocha and that guy is the fight to make personally. I feel like the McKinson fight on the night really sucked a lot of energy out of the crowd.
Right.
Rocha,
it was a unanimous decision, right?
Yeah, it wasn't, and people were booing. people were really booing. It was a real style clash, but I don't know. You could put those two together, but really, I'd put Rocha in with, I don't know. You could put him in with a few guys, and I think you'd have a good fight. But I don't know. I'd like to see him keep going. Really, I've become a bit of a fan of Rocha from the way he was throughout the whole week. Way more so than I was before.
Right.
He's hard not to like, isn't he?
Yeah, how can you not like him? He's just a real lovely young guy. I think he's only 24 years old. So again, like he's, you know, if you're going to say how solid and strong and all, and you know, physically, you know, when you're in your prime as a man, he's still 4 or 5 years away from that age.
He's changed a lot, though, hasn't he, Danny? Like,
yeah,
physically in the picture from when he won and the referee's like holding his arm up, you can see he's got a lot more muscular over the last few years since we started the podcast and had him on as a guest.
Yeah.
What did you guys think of him when you had him on?
He's great.
Yeah, very good. Speaks very well, very down to earth, good sense of humor. Like you said,
him and his brother too. Him and his brother Ronnie Rios. They're both like that.
Very good.
Yeah. Where's Santana then compared to where you guys are? Is it kind of like, if I was looking at LA, I think a lot of it.
It's just past Disneyland in
okay.
County.
Yeah, so like Anaheim and
it's like it's pretty much right next to Anaheim. So Disneyland is a couple miles away from Santa Ana, so he's not too far from there.
I mean, this probably says how foreign I am. I'd class all of that as Los Angeles.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't be wrong. The baseball team, the Anaheim Angels, who are in Orange County, I mean, years ago, they changed the marketing of their team to call themselves the Los Angeles Angels, even though they're not in Los Angeles County. So you're not the only one who looks at the geographical region like that. So everybody does. It's just easier to say it's Los Angeles. It's all one big area. But yeah, in terms of the Rocha's win, I was telling Mike when we previewed it last week, Al, and you tell me if you agree with me or not. But I never, it was a good. I was actually a better fight than I thought. I thought Cobbs, held his own. But going into the fight, I felt that Rocha was too big of a matchup for him. I thought, like, people, I saw tweets and posts online that were saying, "Oh, this is a 50-50 fight. This is a pick'em fight," But I never, maybe because the last couple of years we've seen Rocha develop around here, and we've been to his fights in person, and we've interviewed him and stuff like that. But I never felt it was that even. I always thought that Rocha was a huge favorite, and obviously he proved that he got the stoppage there. But I mean, what's your take on that? Do you agree with that, or did you think it was a 50-50 fight leading into it?
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought it was 50-50. I definitely have seen more of Rocha than Cobbs. I feel like Cobbs is just not just he's got to where he is on boxing, but like it seems like he was talking himself into that position more than anything. But he did have the backing of Freddie Roach. I mean, some people say, look, Freddie Roach says all sorts of support for his fighters, but Roach was telling me that both guys have gotten Manny Pacquiao ready for fight, so he's seen both firsthand, and he was saying that Cobbs was the better puncher of the two, and he was picking his guy to win by knockout. So maybe people are more, I don't know, coming. Fight week changes everything, I think. Like, even me being there, I got so sucked into that fight. I thought and I had a lot of fun covering it. I thought it was I mean, it's like I've been to an event every single weekend that I've been here in the US now, so it's 8 weekends. And Rocha has definitely been one of the top 3 guys to have left an impression on me, where I'll be thinking about him for probably quite some time. But
he's a great guy. Yeah, he's great. Like you said, he was a great interview, makes eye contact with you, and
scandal-free as well. Like, it kind of can go a long way when we've got the people that go mainstream in this sport and in MMA can sometimes be the ones who are controversial. I mean, like Colby Covington says some wild stuff. Conor McGregor is in and out of I want to say jail cells, really, but he hasn't been in trouble with the law for a while. But those sort of guys can be the ones who generate go to the front page of the newspaper rather than just near the back. So when we have someone like Rocha, I think we should probably cherish them a little bit more, because they're good ambassadors for our game. Some of the guys that I like the most, like in history, like I like Vladimir Klitschko. I feel like the way he, America and even Britain never really warmed to him for ages. The time where I feel like it changed for Vladimir in the UK was when he fought David Haye, and David Haye was just saying some like god awful crap about Vladimir, and it just switched the British public. They'd be like, hang on a minute, hold your horse, Dave. It did seem like he lost the British support a little bit, not all of it, but he still had like a football fan support similar to, I suppose, Ricky Hatton and people who kind of piggyback on the popularity of football in Britain with an inbuilt sort of maybe they go on the soccer shows. Soccer AM is quite big, so they kind of get a seat on the sofa on those TV shows. But I just feel like Vladimir Klitschko carried himself pretty well in boxing, and someone like Alexis Rocha is probably quite similar in that they're, where's the real scandal in guys like this?
Right.
They're just like boxing well, and they're really good at what is really a violent sport, but they're doing so in a quite classy way.
Mike, what'd you think of Rocha's win?
Good performance. Like we kind of said before we started recording, like I did worry for a little bit because I've always liked Rocha. I like him, he keeps himself to himself, just does his work. I like the fact that, he'd go and be a sparring partner for some of the best in the world. Josh Taylor, Canelo, Manny Pacquiao recently. He's in there learning against the best, which is, I like to see. But then he fought that fight with Valenzuela where we were at Fantasy Springs, and Valenzuela came in, looked like a padded record, something like, I don't know, 20 wins, 18 by knockout, but all in Mexico. And then Rocha went life or death with him. And I was like, oh no, here we go. He's not going to pan out. He's done too much sparring. He's become, like a sparring partner, kind of material mentality or something like that. But I think it was just one of those fights where, he tried to impress too much, and he stood and traded with him instead of, just being like, okay, this guy's heavy-handed. I'm just going to box, just box his ears off and, maybe win like a boring, 12-round decision, But Rocha kind of dealt with that adversity and then came back and, lost to Ellis. Then Al was just saying, he said that now that he's lost that 0, he's lost that then maybe that's off his mind. And that was one of the most attacking performances I've seen from Rocha. He's throwing heavy hands, and that's not something that we were accustomed to, Daddy. Really, when we saw him coming up on the smaller Golden Boy shows, that wasn't him, but I liked it. To me, it was great. I was like, okay, I like this from Rocha. Like maybe like you said, maybe before when he kept thinking about losing his we had kind of a defensive mentality because he didn't want to lose it, but now it's gone. So maybe that's just taken like all of that weight off his shoulders. And if so, I like this new Rocha.
Yeah, me too. I was very impressed with his patience in this fight as well, because there was shots that he landed where, sometimes, especially as a younger fighter, you land a significant shot and you just attack your opponent like, oh, I hurt him, I'm going to go after him. There was quite a few moments where he landed a significant shot, but he paced himself. He's like, okay, I got you. I'm going to find another opening. You can watch his footwork. Like I was very impressed. So you can tell he's like the way he's learning in each fight since that loss, he's like picking something extra up along the way in each additional fight. So yeah, like you said, like we talked about, he's only 24 years old. He's still got a lot of years in front of him. Obviously, it seems like Golden Boy has, is behind him, and they're hoping to see what he goes. I did see some people online say like, oh, maybe Golden Boy puts him against Virgil Ortiz next because they're both Golden Boy fighters. I'm not a fan of that one. Not yet. I don't think, maybe down the line, if Rocha keeps winning and Virgil keeps winning, Golden Boy kind of builds both of them up as they're doing. But in terms of next or even in the next 2 fights or so, I'm not a fan of that matchup for Rocha. I don't, and it's not to say that he can't have a shot, but Virgil Ortiz he's at that next level, maybe, a level and a half above Rocha at the moment right now. But for Cobbs, at least in my opinion, for Cobbs, as we were talking about with Al just before we started recording, I was impressed by Cobbs. Like we talked about, he has that personality where he sells you. It's like the marketing behind. He has like kind of like that WWE personality, using like the Ric Flair, mannerisms and all that. The professional wrestling mentality. But it works. He gets people to tune in. And he had some of the biggest names in the sport kind of post about him. Errol Spence, they weren't nice tweets, but he was posting about him like, who is this guy? So he got somebody's attention. He started getting some significant people's attention. I mean, if he didn't have that personality, would somebody like Errol Spence or some of these guys, would they be even posting about him? Would they feel it's worth their time? Obviously, Spence felt, okay, it's worth my time to at least post about this guy, even if it's negative. And like we talked about, the life that he had lived up to this point, especially when he was a child in regards to his dad and all that, and now main eventing a show on one of the biggest platforms in boxing on DAZN in Los Angeles, California, one of the biggest cities in the world, Hollywood. I think that's an achievement in and of itself. And the guy can obviously has boxing ability to be able to get to this point. And I was impressed with him. I think like a lot of people, I bought into the notion that he wasn't, the hype kind of exceeded his talent, which I still kind of agree with that. But I think that gap between the hype and his talent is maybe decreased a little bit after last Saturday. Because I was impressed. He went 9 rounds with Rocha, and I thought Rocha was going to get him out like in 4 or 5. And he got some shots in. It ended how I thought it would end. I thought Rocha was just too much for him, which ended up being the case. But I gotta give it to Cobbs. People are annoyed by him, but I'm a fan. I think he won me over last Saturday. It wasn't that I was a hater, but I think he won me over last Saturday, and I wouldn't mind seeing him again.
I'm just thinking that Oscar De La Hoya loves the gimmick. He's got Blair Cobbs, Ric Flair, Nico Macias, the Rooster. Then he had that big Chinese heavyweight that couldn't box. And then they had the next Mike Tyson and James Wilson.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. What do you think about that, Al? What do you think about like gimmicks like that in boxing?
I think like we are in the fight game, and there is a part of this that is the entertainment business. And I think the worst thing you can be if you're trying to resonate with fans is to just make people feel like, meh. If you're going to make people feel something, I don't think it really matters if you're making them feel like, that they like you or that they don't, as long as you're making them feel something. And Blair Cobbs definitely makes people feel something. It does seem like he's got way more like non-fans than fans.
Yeah.
And he was booed a lot at the end, especially when he said he was going to be back and he wooed again. But I think it can be quite funny. I was drawn to him during fight week. He's definitely got like, it's not him. It is a character, but it's still a version of him, just kind of emphasized quite heavily. But the fact that he's doing it in wildcard, I think is funny as well. That he's going around even when the cameras aren't there and he's just wooing to Freddie Roach while he's on the mix with him. That like image in my head makes me laugh. And when we were speaking to Rocha in the post-fight scrum, and Rocha was kind of dabbing this small white towel onto on his eyebrow. It was just a medium-sized swelling. It wasn't too bad, but it was just weeping a little bit. But it was staining the white. I'm not sure where that was from. He thought it was from the first round, but so Blair's got hands. If he's able to do that in round one, and cut him open, or like have a bruise that ends up weeping blood. I will segue back into Cobbs, but he did say on the Ortiz fight, he said it doesn't make sense for them fighting next or anytime soon. That it makes sense for Ortiz going for one alphabet title and then him going for another, and then them unifying. That would be I think that would be his plan, and probably Golden Boy's plan as well. But yeah, he was saying again, like in the ring, like he was saying, Blair was talking shit in the ring. So I was kind of saying, what was he saying? And I was thinking he was going to say like, oh, that one hurt, I'm going to get you and all this sort of stuff. But no, he was just wooing. Every single punch landed. So it's just like, he's not even doing it in front of fans at that point. He's just, at what point do you become the character? But I don't know, that made me laugh as well. And I've even got like a little tear in my eye thinking that like, that's cracked me up a little bit.
Yeah.
But
Al, what do you think? We talked obviously the co-main event. Michael McKinson, he got the unanimous decision win over Alex Martin. Do you think a Rocha McKinson fight is logical?
That was talked about both before the show and after, so it feels like that could happen. I think it would make way more sense that happening in Los Angeles, just because I don't know. I was really impressed with the turnout when you take away the star power of Ortiz, there was even talk about, I don't think it was serious talk, but is the show in disarray? Turned out no, it never really was. And I think both Rocha and Cobbs were confident that their fight would be elevated to the main event. So when you're missing Ortiz and you still have that level of atmosphere, you can't do it in England. Maybe you could go to England and I don't know, what's the value in maybe getting a few of the English fans there? I don't know. I think Rocha's got a good thing here, and they should probably bring McKinson back again. Maybe for another payday after he to his credit, he made weight, he turned up and did what he was paid to do in the first place. He just didn't have the dance partner throughout the week, and he said he would fight whoever. And it just turned out, unfortunately, for him to be it was really hard to watch that. Just clash, and again the fans just hated it. They booed mercilessly at that point. Pretty much after every single round, when it was clear that was going to just go the distance like that. But I wouldn't be surprised to see that happen at some point this year. It would just be a question of where it would take place. It just makes sense for me to put it in Los Angeles.
If I was Team Rocha, I wouldn't want any part of that. I think he hasn't been shown a lot of love by Golden Boy. I think he's been in there with some tricky customers. Rocha, this is what I'm talking about. It was some tricky customers where he's kind of expected to win, but the shows haven't been too great because he's fought like he fought that Japanese dude at Fantasy Springs who was like, had a lot of fights and never been knocked out when Rocha went like either 10 rounds or 12 rounds with him. Then he fought that Valenzuela, went life or death with him. He's not been matched, I don't think, easily or very well because he's been in with a lot of like people that he's not got much upside. And I think that's McKinson again. Like they've just seen the star power of Rocha. He sold out that show because, they were offering refunds for people that came to see Virgil Ortiz. He has a good following from San Ana. Obviously, Ronnie Rios is his brother. Why not give him some, favorable fights now, because he's still young. They've still got another 10 years of him. So sticking him in against McKinson. McKinson doesn't have a name in the US. How would you describe him, Ali? Just wins on points constantly. He's not very good to watch.
I feel like he's got less of a name after that. Like it wasn't really. Yeah. It was just like a really hard to watch fight. And
that's what it would be against Rocha, I think, unfortunately. And like McKinson is just very difficult. He's very tricky. He's very negative, and it's the sort of fight where there's really no upside for Rocha in that. I know Golden Boy may think it's a good matchup stylistically for him in the future, but he's going to get to the point where Rocha's going to be like 21 fights, 22 fights into his career, and a lot of people are going to be like, I've seen him fight before. All these fights, they always go 12 rounds. They're terrible to watch and turn him off. You only get one chance to make a good first impression. All right, and that McKinson failed on his. They should have given him an easier fight and let him get some USA fans. Where now everyone's going to be like, "Oh, that guy's terrible. You got booed off last time."
Yeah,
maybe, but like, Mike, I don't really agree that Golden Boy's been like. Obviously, they've been putting Rocha in tough fights throughout his careers, but I mean, Golden Boy's known to do that, especially. Us being a lot of Golden Boy shows here in Southern California, they'll match up their prospects together. Like, okay, let's see who takes it. You guys are, well, yeah, not all of them, not yet, but they'll put them into the fire. Like, okay, we got you to this point, and sometimes they do it a lot earlier than some other promoters. Or they'll face them off against each other or what have you. Look at like this one, in a sense, Cobbs and Rocha. And I think how Golden Boy looks at it, I mean, like, especially with Oscar De La Hoya at the helm, I mean, you can't say whatever you think about Oscar De La Hoya now or in the past or whatever, he fought everybody, he had losses, but he fought everybody. He was, he was the Golden Boy, and he fought all the big names. He was there and he went against all of them. He made his money. His star power rose, even with a couple losses and all that. But he was the superstar. He was the man. And with I think that's how De La Hoya looks at a lot of these fighters that he has. I mean, any promoter would look at it, but especially with somebody who was the fighter for a generation or a decade or whatever, like a De La Hoya, he likes these fighters. I'm assuming we're putting him in with these tougher guys, and he's getting the job done most of the time. Obviously he has the one loss to Ellis, but he's rebounded since then. And to De La Hoya and to Golden Boy, they can rely on him. Like, he delivers. We can put him in there and keep bringing him back. And then he's only 24 years old. And if we keep building him up, he can become a star, and he can be a real player, a major player in whatever division he's in, whether he stays at 147 or he goes to 154 or he ends his career at 160, what have you. It's going to keep going as the years progress. But I think they match him. I mean, I think they match him up. They've been matching him up pretty difficult because they know that he can take it. I mean, right? Or am I wrong?
Well, no, you're right. He's 19-1. His only losses to Ellis, and for some reason, Golden Boy don't seem to have much stock behind Ellis, where every gym that you go to and every sparring partner, including Canelo, all rate Ellis.
Mm-hmm. Al, have you heard it? Did anybody that last weekend ask about Ellis, or have you heard anything?
Only post fight. It was kind of, would you rematch him, or are you interested in rolling that back. And he didn't seem. I think he said if it falls on his lap, he would take it. These are kind of my words now, not repeating them word for word. But I think he said he's more looking onwards and upwards.
That wasn't a good stylistic match for him. He's far too quick for him. Rocha looked kind of lost in that fight, and I like Rocha.
Yeah. What would you? I mean, was it kind of like a Gary Russell, Joseph Diaz Jr. matchup? How Russell was just too quick, the speed.
Yeah, the speed was such a factor. Normally it's a factor, but that was the deciding factor in that fight. Ellis just looked too big, too strong, too quick in that fight. But Rocha does look different though. I think he's just kind of got like a bit more of his man strength and stuff like that, and it would be good to see like the evolution of him over time, because I think just because we've seen him so long, because he's a local fighter, you think he's a lot older than that, but he's only 24. He's still a baby, really.
Yeah. No, yeah. But like in terms of the boxing years, I think he's a little bit ahead of his time, and that's how we kind of look at him. But
he's 24, 20 fights, and 2 years of COVID. So he's doing right.
That's true. Yeah, he's still on an okay path. Moving on. Also, this past Saturday, the 19th of March, from the Duty Free Tennis Stadium in Dubai. What a name for that stadium, Duty Free. I wonder. I would run a research to see what that means. Sonny Edwards remains undefeated with the 12-round unanimous decision win over Mohamed Wasim. This was for the IBF flyweight world title. Al, did you catch Edwards' performance? And if you did, what'd you think about it?
No, the only thing I saw was the empty arena. I think duty free means when you go through an airport and you don't pay the tax on it or something.
Is that what it means? I'm not sure.
Yeah. So I bought like a load of aftershave coming to Las Vegas, and it was seen as duty free.
Yeah. Tax-free havens, aren't they? For some reason, airports. Yeah.
I never thought duty free was a brand though, so it kind of blows my mind. There's
okay, so it's a brand. I should have put two and two together. That makes sense. Well, Sonny Edwards obviously got the 12-round unanimous decision win. Where does he go? Where does Edwards go from here, Al?
Probably back to Dubai. Like he's quite comfortable there, and he's got his advisors there, or his friend, whoever he keeps on talking about. Daniel Kinahan's quite vocal on it, and Probellum seemed to like Dubai for one reason or another, and we'll probably talk about that later as well. But he seems to be the choice for a Probellum Dubai, sort of main event. I wouldn't be surprised to see him back there. It just doesn't look good to see empty arenas, especially when the talk or the promotional talk is that they're trying to turn Dubai into a new like a boxing hotbed. They're not even calling it a boxing hotbed. I think they're even calling it a new fight capital of the world. And the UFC tried to say this with Abu Dhabi, and when I was there in Abu Dhabi, so Abu Dhabi and Dubai, they're in the same country, the UAE, but their cultures are different and they kind of compete against one another. I think there's kind of like a rivalry there. But from what I was gathering from locals and, people that were in the industry in Abu Dhabi, is that the locals like to go to shows kind of late and they're quite casual with coming and going, which is quite boxing anyway. Sometimes you see people just turn up to the main event, or they turn up to the second fight because that's their mate, and then they disappear, and then there's empty seats there for the rest of the night. But with the that show that just happened, it just didn't seem like there was anyone there.
Right. Yeah, that's what it seemed like. Yeah.
So what are you really building there? Why aren't? What's the sort of goal of even, or what's the point of even having it there when Sonny Edwards could probably be, could box in front of fans in England, right?
Right.
That's kind of I'm not too, I'm suspicious about Probellum anyway and their goals in boxing, but that to me was kind of a bit weird to see, a show that it didn't. The only people who looked there, the only people who seemed that they were there on the clips that I saw were the crew. Do
you think he fights Martinez, Al?
Yeah, maybe. I'm not.
I still think that's a good fight. I hope it happens.
I'm just wondering now, though, is he all wrong for Martinez? And is Eddie that high on Martinez that he's like, I don't know if I want that.
I mean, to be fair to Sonny Edwards, because I know he gets a wind people up the wrong way. But he does definitely have some, like, he's an awkward guy. And when he's elite with that awkwardness, he's definitely got like serious talent and technique in what he does. But I just find it a bit weird that you're not boxing in front of any fan. Not him. I'm not criticizing Sonny him. It's more just the purpose of the show being there. It just seems a weird choice, unless it's for another means.
Right.
To launder money, maybe.
Oh, we'll get into that, of course, like we always do with Al, for sure. Also on that card, Regis Prograis, who's also signed some type of deal with Probellum, gets the six round TKO over Tyrone McKenna. McKenna was down in round 2 in this fight before being stopped in the 6th round. I mean, you tell me what you think about this, Al, but like Prograis, he had so much momentum, especially after the Taylor fight. Even though he was coming out on a loss on that end, it was a great fight, and he still had a lot of momentum following that fight. But I feel like he's lost a lot of it, and I think he's at this point where, I mean, I don't know if Probellum, hopefully they can land him a significant name or what have you, but I think that he needs a big fight next to get right back in the mix. Unless he's just, they're paying him so well that he doesn't really care anymore. I mean, what do you think?
I was ringside for the Taylor fight, and I wasn't I don't actively score fights when I'm kind of reporting them, and just kind of trying to write the report and get that done rather than focus on 10-9 and all this sort of stuff. But I remember being at the end, and I really didn't know what to do with the headline or the intro or the outro of this story. I just had the bulk of what actually happened, because I didn't know who was going to win. It just felt like that was quite even. And I haven't watched it back, but it just felt like that was at the time. It felt like a draw. But it was a really, really good fight. It was the we're about to get the branding wrong. World Boxing Super Series final on an otherwise Eddie Hearn card, but that stole the entire show. I don't think I could. I'd have to look up on BoxRec to tell you who else boxed on that show. And Taylor's face was a mess. He had this really big swelling, like grotesque, looked like a cartoon fist coming out of his face, that Prograis did to him. But so, I mean, Taylor's gone on to have up and down fights, really. But Prograis hasn't even had the ups. Like you say, it's just, the momentum it feels like, he was blown up like a balloon, and then it's just deflating every year. There's big fights that we would like to see, but, what's realistic? How much sway can Probellum have with cross promotion here? Is my kind of question.
Right.
He deserves it, man, because Prograis, when that fight alone, just to see him climb back to where he was, this just shows boxing's like, what have you done for me lately, sport? But yeah, he deserves more, really, Prograis. But again, I don't know. It's got to the point now where they could announce another fight with a like middle-sized name, and I just wouldn't be surprised.
Right.
He did the Amir Khan thing. His stock was so high where he's like, okay, I'm going to strike while the iron's hot, and I'm going to take a Broner fight. I'm going to get a Mikey Garcia fight, and he got none. Like Amir Khan did when Amir Khan was waiting for the Pacquiao or Floyd Mayweather fight.
Yeah,
he waited. And sometimes you get lucky. Look at like Rocky Fielding, Jacobs, and all those guys. They kind of did the similar thing, and they got the big fights with Canelo. But Prograis waited and got nothing.
The one to really make would be Crawford, right? Because they're both got a relationship with Daniel Kinahan. So, like, putting aside all of like my reporting on Kinahan, just make that fight.
Right.
It was supposed to be
move up.
It was supposed to be Mikey, wasn't it?
I think so.
Until he got beat by Sandor Martin. That was who it was supposed to be. And then, obviously, Sandor Martin came in and spoiled that plan. So
yeah, I mean, we'll see, but I mean, I think Prograis needs some type of name or some type of significant fight in his next fight, at least by the end of the year, because that momentum has severely deflated, as Al was saying in your analogy, like a balloon and stuff. That's it's exactly what's going on. Also, this past weekend from the Wembley Arena in London, David Avanesian gets the first round TKO over Oskari Metz. I hope I said that right. I think I botched it last week too. This is for the EBU European welterweight title, another alphabet title thrown in there. Wasn't Avanesian out? Wasn't him and Ortiz talked about as a matchup?
Yeah, Avanesian's always been talked about as an opponent, but they never seem to come to fruition. I was thinking you were going to say there's a guy in the UK. I think I even want to say it's not Conor Benn. Who am I thinking of? Do you know, Mike? Because it was linked with like an Eddie Hearn guy for a while. Maybe it was Conor Benn.
I think it was Conor Benn.
Yeah,
Conor Benn for a while, and who was the other one? Josh Kelly.
Yeah, that's it. That's the one I'm thinking of. Josh Kelly. Yeah. But yeah, Avanesian's again just got tricky skills, but it seems like he's, I don't know, a little bit avoided maybe.
Right. Seems like it.
Well, he's trying to cash out as well, isn't he? At the end of the day, he's shouting Conor Benn because he knows Conor Benn has a big following. But you've only a handful of fights ago, he got his ass handed to him by Kavaliauskas. Kavaliauskas is just a big muscular brawler, right? And he made easy work of Avanesian. He had him dropped and had him all over the place. He's just trying to make as much noise as he can and fight Conor Benn, and that's why he's fighting Oskari Metz. No one's ever heard of him. There's 3 boxing nerds or geeks sat right here on this podcast. None of us have heard of Oskari Metz. So that goes to show, he's just getting another W whilst he waits for a bigger payday.
Yeah.
I'm saying it like it is today. I need to calm down on the caffeine.
No, I like it. I don't feel like the noise he's making just isn't really resonating now, I don't think. No. Like, I feel like it would probably be easy to avoid him because it's like, what really is he doing to kind of get the sort of crossover fights? And Avanesian, I think, is just more of like, he's kind of more mentioned in sort of hipster circles or promotional circles rather than fights that are going to get him to the place that he would probably want to be.
Do you know this? Right. Do you know the fight that strangely kind of got him where he is? Beating the other boxing hipster, Kerman Laharaga. When he beat him twice, because he had that like Bilbao, like he knocked out Bradley Skeet. He had the little ponytail. He looked like a nutcase. And then obviously he went over there, beat him, rematched him, beat him again. And then that was where he kind of like came from, like out of nowhere, because Laharaga just had that menacing little ponytail, and the crowd would go crazy fighting in Spain. All the Bilbao fans were there, making it like a cauldron, and yeah, it just kind of took off from there.
Also on that card, Hamza Shiraz. I don't think I said that right either. I need to start looking at these phonetically before each show. Gets the second round KO over Jez Smith. This was for the vacant WBC International Silver Middleweight title. What'd you think about this matchup, Mike?
Good. He made easy work of it, actually. I actually thought Jez Smith at times can come in and, he looks kind of good. He can definitely box, but I think just the fact that, I think he's a part-timer. I think he works at the same time and stuff like that. So, sometimes he looks good, sometimes he doesn't. But Shiraz obviously moved up for this fight to middleweight after, struggling against Bradley Skeet, and, obviously knocked him down, hit him whilst he was on the ground. Offered a rematch. The British Board of Boxing agreed, and for some strange reason, Bradley Skeet decided to reject it, even though he was winning the fight beforehand. I didn't really get that, why he did that. I'm sure it probably would have been a good payday as well, because I think everybody, would have wanted to see it due to the animosity in it. So that was a very strange decision from Bradley Skeet on my part. But Shiraz looked good. Obviously, the fight's local to us. If you know that Ali fights with Ricky Funes in Van Nuys.
Right. Yeah. Tengus boxing.
Yeah, Tengus boxing gym. I would like to know how that happened, because he's British.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, we'll stop by that gym once, or if Al stops there before us, he can ask that question. I'm sure we'll find out that information. Also, this past weekend from the Madison Square Garden Theater, the theater at Madison Square Garden in New York City on ESPN, Edgar Berlanga remains undefeated with the unanimous decision win over 10 rounds against Steve Rolls. This was for the WBO NABO super middleweight title. Al, before I get your take on the matchup, at this point, what do you think about Berlanga? Is he the real deal? Can he develop into something?
Still would want to give him a little bit of patience because he's still 24 years old. But again, using that like deflating sort of, he had all that hype of being like so many first round knockouts, and I mean I think it's 3 decisions in a row now. Just feels like though that's the hype is slowly deflating, but he's still young and he's still I still give him more time. But when I'm thinking of top ranked prospects who I think have got a higher ceiling, I don't necessarily think of Berlanga. I have to say, I think of Sander Zayas and Gerard Anderson. I'm much higher on Sander Zayas. I just think I can't believe he's still only 19. It feels like he's been a prospect for maybe he has been a prospect for years, and he just burst onto the scene, making his debut at maybe 16, 17 or something. But I remember Bob Arum telling me that the thing that struck him about this kid was that he was already 5'10", 5'11" at 16. And I think the idea is to keep him at super welterweight, but he was just saying that like body wise, he thinks he's going to end up being like a 3-4 weight class campaigner, like the sort of great I don't know, I want to say Miguel Cotto, the great Puerto Rican fighters of the recent past. I just feel like the ceiling's higher for Xander a little bit. I feel like he's been more impressive, more consistently, and he's younger and he's got more to develop. But so my take on Berlanga is not really too different than what everyone else is saying. I do feel like I don't think the hype train's derailed. I just feel like it's slowed down a lot. And that the next fight, it really is key to regain the momentum he had when Top Rank was building him up first. Even in the recent 2 years ago when he was still bulldozing through people, it's just how there comes a time when your punching power ends up being quite less of an effect against people who can absorb those blows or know how to just like make one sort of movement where it takes a lot of the power out of the shot. And maybe he's reached that ceiling, but maybe he's not. But I still think, we'll see. I still think we'll give him more time rather than writing him off completely, since he's still an undefeated guy and he's still again, years away from his sort of peak years as a male athlete rather.
Mike, what'd you think about Berlanga's performance?
Terrible.
Tell me why. Tell me why.
That's amazing.
Tell me why.
He couldn't cut the ring off. Looked very one-dimensional. When you could see early on that Steve Rolls knew he had power, so he'd keep on the bike, keep moving away. Berlanga didn't know how to sidestep and cut the ring off for him. He just kept following him around. And then when he didn't mix his punches up, didn't do different combinations, didn't use the jab or anything like that, or feints to unlock, positions for him to be able to, connect with him fully. Just simple things like that. I think he spent so long, believing in the power and believing in his own hype and stuff like that, that I think it's going to take a lot. And I don't know whether he's the sort of person that's going to be able to go back to the drawing board and change it. I mean, I don't know him, but looking from the outside in, that he loved the hype. He's hanging around with Fat Joe, money, posting pictures on private planes. I've always said that I'm not a big fan of that sort of stuff, unless you're just using it for a gimmick, because it then goes away from what's the bread and butter, like getting in the gym, learning. That's why Canelo and people like that are so rare, because he's made all the money, but he's still hungry. He's back in the gym the next day. Whereas from Berlanga, from what you can see, just on social media, obviously I don't know him, but it's I don't see it happening. I don't think he'll do it. I think he likes the limelight. He likes nightclubs and, posting money and stuff like that and going out, and when he can do all that when he retires. It's a very short career.
Right. I think Top Rank right now, they're obviously going to ride this train until they can't ride it anymore to see if it pans out. Like Al was saying, he's only 24. The hype train has slowed down. But not looking at the actual fight outcome and how he performed against Steve Rolls this past weekend, that was a sizable crowd that was drawn in New York City. And I'm sure Top Rank notices that, and then he has that connection to the rapper Fat Joe and some other celebrities, and he's got, the associations like that, and the social media. And at the end of the day, boxing is a business. We all know that. Top Rank can see, okay, we can put this kid in a bunch of shows on New York, and if he keeps winning and still has some type of following, we can make some money with these crowds. And they're going to keep putting him in New York City to draw those sizable crowds in one of the biggest cities, most coveted cities in the world, in New York City, like I mentioned. But Al, you had something to add?
It kind of reminds me a little bit of, if this is going to be a crossroads, but I was thinking, if you guys thought the matchmaking by bringing in Rolls, seeing Tom Leffler even put a quite passive aggressive tweet out about it, comparing Gennady Golovkin's, I think it was 4th round knockout in 2018 maybe, compared to Berlanga. But if Top Rank, if the matchmaking there was thinking Steve Rolls was going to be a guy 37 years old, he's only been fighting once a year, and he was knocked out by a puncher 3-4 years ago, thinking this was the match to make to get that knockout run, back on the rails again. And if it hasn't panned out, how is this a crossroads of where they then go if he just moves on to the next guy, if they bring in someone more likely to be knocked out? I was kind of thinking just then about what Bellator MMA did with Michael Venom Page. He's now fighting for a title, but for ages they were just feeding him guys that he was just going to go in and do these flashy moves and light up the Wembley Arena crowd. 10,000 people would really, he was building an audience of just knocking people out, but the people he was knocking out were just, they didn't have Wikipedia pages. You'd have to really look into who they were to kind of get an idea of I don't know, there was no competition for him, and it just seemed he went from that suddenly to Douglas Lima, who is a killer, really good Muay Thai guy. The way he throws kicks at people's legs is horrible. But now he's got kind of. I was at a fight. I think I was at the last fight last year, and it looked to me like he did win, but it was seen as a real controversial hometown decision because the crowd were just cheering what people on Twitter were saying were missed shots. But to me, it seemed, and press row, it seemed like, he did get the win. So then he got this title fight. But I just wonder, maybe that's what Top Rank might do if they think, if Steve Rolls was going to be the guy to get that knockout run back and going, and he failed to do that, then, how do they then matchmake for Berlanga going forward? Whether they just keep on going, I feel like you're saying if he's selling out 5,000 tickets for the theatre, maybe they just go the Michael Venom Page Bellator MMA route and just have this local guy who has a big following who can knock people out, but you don't know who they are.
Al, do you think if there's an opening for a WBO shot for Andrade's 160 title, do you think Top Rank takes that risk for Berlanga?
Move him down?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Andre's fighting for the 168 interim, right?
Yeah, against Zach Parker, and Canelo holds the full.
Right. I mean, do you think that, with especially, I thought Andre comes to my mind because Andre just can't seem to get any of these bigger, significant names. And maybe Top Rank, I don't know about that. I don't know about after this fight against Steve Rolls and the performance he put on there, but I mean, do you think it's possible that Top, especially with the association with the WBO, the relationship Top Rank has there, do you think they would consider Berlanga and Andrade at 168 matchup?
Oh man, the thing is, I've seen Andrade look what I thought was really good, but whenever I think of what year that was, it was a long time ago, and he's never gone above that level of competition. So I still don't really know where Andrade's level is.
Right.
I think they both beat him, Andrade and Zach Parker.
I agree. Yeah, I think
Andrade is weirdly does this thing where he comes out for a round or two, judges how good you are, and he goes, okay, Al Dawson's a 70, so I'll do 71. And then I'll just coast at that for the rest of the 12 rounds. And that's what he seems to do. And I don't know, for some reason, he just seemed how many times does he come out, look $1 million, knocks them down, and then goes, I'm just going to coast for another 11 rounds now.
He stopped Quigley though.
I could stop Quigley.
I'm gonna cut that part out. I'm gonna tag him so he can hear you say that. I'm gonna tag Golden Boy and I'm gonna tag all of them. But I'm just saying because of the WBO, Andrade, had the WBO at 160, and then he's fighting for the interim and all that stuff, and the relationship that Top Rank has with the WBO for so many years, and they still keep going. I was thinking, if they see an opening and Andrade wants to fight, is open to fighting Berlanga, and they feel Berlanga's ready, I don't think that matchup's so, out of the order, out of possibility, I guess.
I'm going to throw something at you right now. So if Andrade beats Zach Parker, obviously Canelo's probably going to relinquish all the titles at 168. He'll get moved up to the full WBO 3-weight world champion, 154, 160, 168.
Andrade, yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
And he's fought nobody.
Hey, you know what? I get it. He gets a lot of criticism, but I'm giving him a lot of credit when he tried to get Canelo after that press conference of the Billy Joe Saunders fight. He went there at the post fight and he tried to, get something going. It was Canelo who kind of invited him in with the insults. Andre was saying, "Oh, I'm a big fan. When can we get it on?" And Canelo started saying, "Oh, you're a horrible fighter. I don't want to fight you." And then Andre and his dad started pushing back. So, when he did that, I was like, well, that's what he has to do because he's not getting these fights in any other way. So he has to drum up some type of hype. So, hey, 3-weight world champion. What else has he got?
Is that who's worse, that one or Broner's 4-weight world champion? Like all vacant belts, I think. Jeez,
you never know, or unless you want to be a 3 or 4-weight world regular WBA world champion like Gervonta Davis. The regular title. We got to get rid of all these alphabet titles. The WBA, I'm sure Al feels the same about these alphabet titles.
I'd get rid of the WBC after what Mauricio Solomon.
Hold that thought. We're getting there. I know that's your prime time right there. We're getting there. And then, like you mentioned, Al, Xander Zayas gets the 8-round unanimous decision win over Quincy Lavallas. Like you said, Zaya is 19 years old. He's got all the rest of his life ahead of him in boxing and in his personal life. But it seems like, Al, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you're impressed with him and you have some high hopes for the kid.
Yeah, I think if I was thinking of like literally teenagers that I think could go on to become really, really good. I think Zayas is already there as a good prospect, but considering he's still only 19, I think like him and Jalil Hackett. I think Jalil Hackett's still a teenager. I think he might even be younger. But those are the two of the guys, one at Top Rank, one at PBC. I think they can carry, boxing in America, potentially. It's really hard, though, because I think you can pick, like, so many guys who are, there's dozens of them under 25. But when they're at this age, things can go either way. I remember a guy in England that people were kind of getting behind because he had this quirky backstory. He was called Romeo Romeo. He was technically, I think, homeless, you would probably call it. He lived in the forest. This is what the backstory was. So I don't know if this was verified, kind of saying what the story that they were putting out was. So he lived in the forest with his dad for a while, and they lived off roadkill. And he was just doing this obscene, like, to us, it would probably look like child abuse, what the dad was putting the kid through with, like, getting up at a certain time. He'd never had a Coca-Cola or sweets. He's living really, like, really on it with, like, various foods and stuff. And his body was obscene. It's like a mini, not Schwarzenegger, but there was like a kid who was like, there was a meme of this, not a meme, but there's a picture of this kid who was like
mini Hercules, wasn't he?
That's it. I'm thinking this is like what Romeo Romeo was like. But he was going out and he was, I remember, my memory's getting a little bit hazy now, but I'm sure it was his either pro debut or his second or third fight. It was on a very like black tie. It was actually a Peacock gym show, going back to Peacock. So I was there. There's this black tie event and he put I think it was even his pro debut, put the guy on the floor and he was down for like, you know, when it gets to be an uncomfortable period of time and people are starting to think shit. So that was happening. So it looked like he didn't just look the part because his body was stupid for like a kid, but he had serious power as well. So he was considered like a good teenage prospect, you know, and how he would develop. But he just went off the radar completely, literally maybe a year or two later. I'd heard a few conflicting things. I don't want to kind of like broadcast too much on air, but you know, your life can go so many different directions when you're a kid. Whether that's because of boxing or because of, you know, one parent or another, or you know, any other social issues or something. But yeah, so things can happen with prospects, and even then, you don't really know how good people. I don't think it's hard. I think it's hard to say until you see people when they really level up beyond the opponents that they're supposed to bulldoze through. But to me, the two that do stand out is Anders Zayas and Jalil Hackett, and I think. I don't know. That's why I just think, you know, all this boxing is dead is bullshit, because you just have these kids come through out of, you know, Anders Zayas hasn't come out of nowhere, and you know, you just hear from them, and then all of a sudden they just put wins together, and I think what's Anders Zayas now? I think he's got 9 knockouts in 13 matches. If he fights, like, how many? Where are we now? March. If he fights like 5-6 times this year, he would definitely be in the shout for prospect of the year.
Right.
And then you know, the little Hackett gets it next year. But I don't know. I think that's awesome. You know, these two little. I mean, I'm going to say they're little boys. They'd hate me saying that, but you know, I'm 31 years old, and you know, you're still so young. You got a whole the years you've lived, you can live again, and all through boxing. That's how young they are. You know.
Right.
But yeah, those are the sort of athletes that do excite me, because I just think they are our future. And if you only have, let's say, 10 of them, if you only have 2 of those 10 that end up being champions, that's still, you know, good to a good conveyor belt of, you know, progress through the sport.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. You know, 19 years old, he's still got a lot of years ahead of him, and I'm sure we'll see a lot more of him as time moves on. Moving on, fight previews this upcoming March the 26th from the First Direct Arena in Leeds on DAZN. Kiko Martinez and Josh Warrington. This is a rematch for the IBF featherweight title. Al, does this end the same as the first one, or does Warrington get his revenge?
I can't see. I don't know. Warrington didn't really impress me he didn't impress me in the first fight. So I don't see. I don't know. It'd have to be a monumental fuck up on the part of Martinez. You know, like almost Ruiz standards for it to sway the result too much. Warrington's a weird one. I've never been too high on him as a champion boxer. I don't know. He just doesn't have. The sort of, what do you call them? The tangibles, I think.
The it factor?
Yeah, he doesn't have that for me. He's kind of like, obviously great to get to the point where he's got to, but to then stay there, I don't think he's never really taken me as someone who's going to get to the level that's, I don't know what kind of, where I'm going with that, but I don't know. I don't think, I wouldn't have my, I think it would be repeat rather than revenge.
Right. Mike, what do you think about this rematch? Does it end the same as the first one?
I think you're thinking of Kid Galahad.
Oh, I'm sorry. I am thinking of Kid Galahad. That's right.
These two have fought before, and Warrington won a close decision.
Yeah, I was thinking about Kid Galahad. I'm sorry.
I don't know. See, it's one of those things. Like, I always used to go against Josh Warrington. I thought Frampton had beat him. I thought Selby would beat him. Obviously, he didn't look that good against Lara. Obviously, he got beat by Lara. Then, obviously, the second fight came out, and we only got a few rounds of that. And even then, Lara was started pretty well, and Warrington looked a little bit better. But I just don't know whether he could have taken Lara's power that whole time. I'm going to back Josh this time. I think he's probably got enough still in the tank to beat Kiko Martinez. But he hasn't fought a lot, you know. I mean, he had that couple of rounds against Lara, and that fight got called off. Then obviously he fought Lara the first time, looked terrible. So we haven't seen him, really, back in the ring for a while. But there's only how many times can Kiko Martinez go to the well?
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, what's this 55 fights? So this is his 56th fight. He's been around since I think I started watching boxing, Kiko Martinez. So, no, it is good to see him be a world champion, though. You know, obviously, again, just because he's just really what boxers should be. He'll travel all over the world and fight. He never backs down from a fight. He's
got a massive following as well. You can't it is amazing when you see those fans for him.
Right. His resume, like Warrington twice, Carl Frampton, Scott Quigg, Kid Galahad, and many more, like all over the world. He just stands and fights. Leo Santa Cruz.
Yeah.
I mean, going back to the fight, I think Josh will win. I think, he really, 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 really needs it. So, if he can't get himself up for a fight like this, then it's probably time to call it a day, really.
Right.
Getting back his IBF featherweight title after relinquishing it is kind of a bit of a strange tale. But, good payday for Kiko. He definitely deserves it. He's been a real good guy in the sport for, many, many years.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also on the card, Maxie Hughes and Ryan Walsh square off for the IBO lightweight title, and then Maria Cecilia Roman and Ebony Bridges, the blonde bomber, go square off for the IBF bantamweight world title. And also this weekend from the Armory in Minneapolis, Minnesota on Showtime, Tim Tszyu and Tszyu-Gausha square off. What do you think about that matchup, Al?
I think it's going to be. I'm interested to see Tszyu fight under the PBC banner, and just kind of interested what happens going forward, because it feels like from a management promotional point of view, why would you only bring him in for one fight? There must be some sort of plan here. So I'm quite curious where the where the game plan is for Tszyu going forward. So I kind of expect expecting kind of maybe a good performance from him to kind of introduce himself properly to the platform.
Right.
Surprised Matchroom didn't sweep him up. Ebony Bridges, Sky Nicholson. Obviously, they're trying to do DAZN in Australia. Who better?
Maybe they tried and he didn't go with them. You never know. Maybe they tried. It didn't work out. And also this upcoming weekend from the Resorts World in Las Vegas, the new hotel in Las Vegas, Nevada on ESPN, Miguel Berchelt returns as he goes up against Jeremiah Nakatilia. Al, I believe you'll be in attendance at that fight in Las Vegas. What's your take on this matchup?
I'm going to be there. I'm going to go. I think the fight week starts Thursday. So this is the first time boxing or any combat sport's been in Resorts World. So we've got the ballroom for the sort of media week, Thursday, Friday, and then there's the main room. And I've never been in this casino in my life. And I was saying off air that what's cool about living here is that you kind of think you're going to be here going to MGM Grand and T-Mobile, and there's not much else in Las Vegas, but in terms of boxing. But really, I think by the end of the year, I'll probably have been in every property on the strip holding boxing. I remember Stephen Espinoza telling me a few weeks ago how critical and supportive the whole of Vegas is to the sport of boxing, not just Showtime. And maybe that quote is quite relevant here with Resorts World supporting Top Rank, because they had Top Rank were at Virgin Hotels, I think, for a 3-event.
Yeah.
The Josh Taylor fight was there when I went.
Yeah, Jose Ramirez, Josh Taylor. Yeah. So it makes sense. So the Resorts World's trying to make their mark with, especially being new. That's usually how it is you kind of get into the fight game when you get into Vegas.
This is Berchelt moving up to lightweight, Al?
Yeah, it's at lightweight, yeah. I mean, it's a good matchup. I kind of think, I don't know, which way do you guys see it going?
I like Berchelt. Even though he got knocked out by Valdez, it was a good fight up until that point. And adding another name like Berchelt to the 135-pound division, I'm all for it, as long as they all finally fight each other. But adding a name like him, to that division with the star power that division has currently, I'm all for it. Just have them all fight, and I'm good. So I'm picking Burchelt in this upcoming weekend's fight. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I agree. Looking at Nakatalia, if that's how you say it, his resume. I mean, a lot of it's all back home in Namibia. They kind of bring him over because he has a record that looks pretty because it's what 22 wins, 18 KOs, and only 2 losses. But his 2 losses have both been when he's gone away, and he fought Shakur Stevenson in 2021, and then Evgeny Kuprakov, I think, a Russian fighter. So padded record. I think Burchelt probably by. I'm going to go on a limb and say by KO. Yeah, he's never lost by KO, but I think, Burchelt maybe with a little bit more food in him, obviously getting up in age, going up a weight category and being heavy-handed as he was. I'm going to go Burchelt, body shot.
Oh, yeah, nice.
Yeah. What do you think, Al?
I just I love seeing body shots. I just think it's the most savage way you can knock someone out, I think.
Right.
I think people might be embarrassed if they're knocked out to the head, but you get up and you're fine, really. I mean, not fine. I know you've got brain trauma and things, but you can shake it off and you're okay and you feel okay. But when you have a body shot and you're knocked out by that, it can ruin you for weeks,
Can't breathe.
Yeah. I feel like it's more, to see it, it's more devastating because it's like you're getting counted out and you're conscious, but you can't do anything about it.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I'd love to see. I love seeing body shot knockouts. I just think they're one of the most horrific way you can end a. Not the most horrific way, but for me, I just think it's just an awful thing to go through. Whenever I've not boxed at a high level, but whenever I did in Peacock Gym, the one time I went to the floor was a body. 2 times I went to the floor. They're both body shots, and that I was ruined. Honestly, I was ruined. The first time I was ruined for about 2 weeks. I think it was probably just bruising. Another time I was ruined for 6 weeks. I think I must have broken something. It was awful.
Yeah. That's the sweet science for you right there. The body shots are, that's what you want to teach a fighter. If you know how to get to the body, that's where you call the sweet science. And then rounding off this weekend's previews of fights, Eric Morales and Orlando Siri Salido both returned to the ring from the Mesquite Arena in Mesquite, Texas on Fight TV. I don't know if this is, I don't know, Mike, is this an exhibition or is this an actual fight?
Well, it's listed as an exhibition, but BoxRec have it on there, which is unusual for BoxRec because they normally they won't show exhibitions. They only show fights that are classed as a professional fight. It's scheduled for 6 rounds, but when you read the preview of it, it's listed as a 6-round exhibition and it's available on Fight TV for, I think, $22.
Right. Yeah. We should be used to seeing these guys come back. Mike Tyson, Roy Jones, all these guys, they're coming back into the fold. And then news and notes, we'll go through them before we get to our.
Salido must have given up his Uber. Gas was costing too much.
Yes, yeah, a lot of people don't remember that he was an Uber driver on his spare time. He was doing that. News and notes: Devin Haney has been reportedly offered the undisputed lightweight title fight with George Kambosos in June in Australia. Lou DiBella supposedly or reportedly told, I believe he told Boxing Scene first. I believe that was true. That Vasily Lomachenko had passed on the fight to remain in Ukraine during the conflict over there. So we'll see what happens from there. And then Artur Beterbiev and Joe Smith reportedly have an agreement in principle for a light heavyweight title unification fight on June 18th in New York on ESPN. It's possible the winner of that could be a potential opponent for Canelo Alvarez, in the next year or so. And then also announced for May 21st of this year, Joshua Boazzi and Craig Richards. That's a pretty interesting matchup, and I'm definitely looking forward to that one, right, Mike?
Yeah, actually, I want to hear Al's take on that. What do you think of that, Al, after you've been...
Yeah, I mean, with Joshua Boazzi, he's like one of these guys that just feel like they've been around for ages, but it's just been waiting for like the step-up fight.
Upset? Could you see an upset?
it's one of those things where it wouldn't surprise, because I feel like sometimes if you're not, maybe there's a reason why he's not had that step up. But there's parts of him that I think are really good. The physicality, I think, he's definitely an athlete. He looks good. There's parts, away from the ring, the way he talks, there's rumblings there that there's things there you can do to help build his star. But yeah, and the association with Anthony Joshua, it just feels like he's not really had the lift off, and I kind of question why.
So it's interesting how they didn't go back to Vlasov.
Right. Yeah.
That's who he was supposed to fight, and everyone was like, "Hey, you know what? Like, that's Eddie turning around and saying to Boatsy, like, you've had enough gimmies now,
right?
Get in there," because there was wasn't it Joe Smith Jr. who he fought? Well, a lot of people were like, you know what? I think Vlasov actually won that, but they gave it to Joe Smith, and then obviously he was supposed to fight him, and then I can't remember, one of them got sick. Was it Boatsy or something? So they called it off, and then now he's facing Craig Richards. But I could see an upset because Boatsy's not been active at all, whether it's been due to injury, COVID, change of trainer. But Craig Richards' last fight is Bivol. And if Craig Richards had got into that fight believing he could have won, I think he would have won it, because he started so slowly and then eventually realized, like, you know what, like, I can actually win this, and then turned it on. But he was kind of probably too many rounds down, or, maybe people just kind of had him as the B-side. And, like, sometimes it's hard to convince the judges of that you're actually winning the fight, because they've already, got the A-side a couple of rounds up, which, just seems to happen in boxing, unfortunately. So, I could see an upset. I could see Craig Richards winning it.
Yeah, possibly. Like, I'm looking forward to that fight, regardless. And see how it pans out. And then, arriving at our topic that I'm sure a lot of people are listening because they saw Al Dawson is our guest this week. This week, let me see if I get this right. The Minister for Sports and Youth Affairs for the government of Punjab in Pakistan, he tweeted out that, and I'm going to read it, quote, met at Probellum on aligning vision on boxing for Punjab and how to make this sport bigger for our youth. Looking forward to hosting Daniel in Lahore to discuss Pakistan's first international fight with foreign world-class boxers. Inshallah Allah, I hope I pronounced that right. We'll share more info in the upcoming weeks, unquote. And then attached to that tweet are pictures of Daniel Kinahan and the Minister of Sports and Youth Affairs for Pakistan. I looked at they're in some type of hotel. Al, tell us, why this is significant for the whole Daniel Kinahan story.
Well, first of all, Daniel Kinahan's a boxing manager who has, for me, he's one of the top 3 most powerful people in the sport. But his involvement in boxing should be scrutinised, because he's been named in Irish high courts as the figurehead of a $1.1 billion crime operation that specialises in the international shipment of cocaine, heroin, weapons, and also specialises in, according to that high court, execution-style murders. So we're not just talking about arms smuggling or arms dealing and massive cocaine shipments. We're talking about murders. And how safe is boxing when it's in the hands of someone like that? When there's been a shooting at a weigh-in in 2016 in Dublin, and Kinahan was apparently the target. And there was also a shooting of a boxer who the gunman suspected to be Kinahan in Spain. So when those things are happening, for me, my focus has always been, is the sport safe, and how safe are fans, how safe are media, how safe are executives and fighters when he's basically controlling it in the whole of Europe. When we think of the most powerful people in boxing in Europe, I've been told by multiple people they're still subservient to Kinahan. If they want to get something done, they still have to go through Kinahan when he advises so many fighters. The reason this development is significant is because we've always known Daniel Kinahan to have quite a fairly big role with MTK Global. Whether MTK Global deny that or not, sometimes they've denied it, sometimes they've said he advises their fighters, and he also advises other people who aren't at MTK. But there's a lot of funneling of people at both an executive level and athletically in the roster who have gone from MTK Global under managerial contracts to Probellum under promotional contracts. Probellum have had fights in Dubai. There's been an MTK MMA show a few years ago called Probellum before Probellum was a thing in boxing. So there's clearly coincidences at the very least about why Probellum has suddenly become they want to tell us they're a force in boxing, and why have they suddenly become a force? For me, it's always been clear that Kinahan's somehow been involved, and whenever reporters in Ireland have tried to contact, write about that, they're apparently threatened with legal letters from Probellum who deny it. But now we've got the Provincial Minister for Sports and Youth Affairs for the government of Punjab, Pakistan, Rai Taimur Khan, saying that he's met Probellum, and the people he's met, there's 4 pictures here that I'm looking at right now. One is of Rai Taimur Khan, the Minister of Sports for Youth Affairs in Pakistan, and he's with Daniel Kinahan in one photo. There's another photo where this government official is seemingly presenting Kinahan with what looks like an award. Interestingly for me, Sandra Vaughan is here as well, and the government official is presenting Sandra Vaughan with a award. Sandra Vaughan was always, quite a leader in MTK Global, and she was always quite vocal that Kinahan wasn't involved, and then she said he was involved, and then she said he wasn't involved. But here they are, both of them doing business with, or being photographed at least, having a meeting, presumably in Dubai, with a government official in Pakistan. And that, according to that government official, he's saying he's met Probellum, and he, from this, from these pictures and from this statement, we can pretty much say that Probellum is Daniel Kinahan. Probellum have since said, though, I can't remember who they've said this to. It was a spokesman, so it wasn't on record. And then when the journalist pushed to say, are you Probellum? Are you Daniel Kinahan? The Probellum spokesman said no, but then there was nothing else. I can't remember who that was sent to. So sorry about that, whoever got that spokesman quote. But to piggyback off that as well, we've also got the WBC president, Mauricio Suleiman. There's a statement on the WBC website talking again about Daniel Kinahan, about how and this is a real piss take, that he's basically saying that I think he's saying like boxing's being discriminated against because people like people like politicians in Ireland and the UK, reporters in Ireland, various other people who are on record with saying about who Daniel Kinahan is and why it's a problem for boxing, saying that this is being like discriminating against the entire boxing community. He's talking absolute bullshit. That he's got pictures with Kinahan in Dubai, and this was coming out today or yesterday, pretty sure it was today, again, of him with Kinahan, and he's talking about being at a show in Dubai, being at Probellum. There are just too many dots here for Probellum to now, they can say that they're not involved and they can threaten legal letters, but, why is Daniel Kinahan being pictured with a government official? Why is he, supposedly having a meeting on behalf of Probellum if he's got nothing to do with Probellum? Why is Sandra Vaughan there from MTK Global? These are quite normal questions to be asking, and Probellum can't be hiding away from this any longer. I've always been told by multiple people when I was in the UK from multiple sources that when Daniel Kinahan, so this is now like the 3rd or 4th time Kinahan's really been behind a media push, or when he's trying to really get into the limelight, and I've always been told that that's quite orchestrated by him, and he micromanages these appearances. So if that's still true, and I believe it would be true, he he knows that this tweet from this Pakistan sports official, this is still there online, and it was made 2 days ago. If Probellum was serious about, not having anything to do with this, they can take that down, or they can contact Twitter, But this is still there. It's not been deleted. For me, these social media, I don't know. Kinahan. We've always been told from the Irish reporters who have been documenting this guy for more than a decade that he's got a very big ego on him. So he was never really going to be like an Al Heyman figure, where Al Heyman's quite happy, very happy to be behind the scenes and push his fighters into the limelight. He likes the fighters to be the story. He doesn't like to be like Bob Arum and Eddie Hearn, where they become a character and really big, larger than life character. He likes the fighters themselves to be the character. So from what we were going to always be led to believe, Daniel Kinahan was never going to be that character where he's happy to be operating in boxing shadows. Things like this they just seem to be quite orchestrated. Especially as they just seem to be coming so thick and fast now.
Right.
And this is like, these are quite serious people. Like how big is Mauricio Solomon? He's literally the leader of the WBC, and he's now talking very positively about Daniel Kinahan. And he's like gone out of his way to go over to Dubai to go to a Probellum show. And in that statement, he's talking about Probellum in one paragraph. He's talking about Daniel Kinahan in another. So these things together, for me, are quite damning for Probellum.
Al, what do you say? Because obviously, one of the criticisms that people give, not just people like you who kind of dive into this situation and talk about it vocally, whether it's on digital platforms or not, or in interviews like this. But what do you say to like the critics that say like, oh, he hasn't been convicted of any crime, even though he's been charged? What do you say to that type of criticism?
Well, why is he in Dubai then? Why is he self-exiled? This is a guy who's, this is true. He's wanted by so many law enforcement agencies. Off the top of my head, the DEA in this country, the FBI, I think, is on their watch list. Interpol, I think, in Europe, but then the ones that I'm sure of, the Gardaí in Ireland, the UK police, the Dutch police, I think the Spanish police. So many police forces, are looking into this guy. I think the DEA had eyes on him when he was getting married in 2018. I think quite recently he got married in Dubai, and the DEA apparently were watching. They've had, this whole wedding was under surveillance because they were interested to know whether he was going to be forming what has been called a European super cartel that involved at least 4 other very prominent cocaine barons. 3 of them and Kinahan, so 4 were in Europe and 1 was South American, and they were all there at the wedding. These like very, very powerful, gangsters that operate in huge shipments of Class A drugs. And what's significant about that wedding, or about the law enforcement watching that wedding, is that since then 2 of those 5 have been arrested. The only people who, I think even 3 actually, I think the only people who remain at large are Daniel and 1 other. He's not leaving Dubai. If he was going to leave anywhere, it would be countries that don't have extradition deals with countries that want him to come in for questioning. It just amazes me that more people it's a credit to you two for us to be talking about this now, but it's I just can't get over how it's a real serious issue in boxing when we're used to being the red light district of sports, but in other sports Daniel Kinahan just wouldn't get in, yet he's welcomed so willingly in ours. And people, it's just getting to the point now where I'm sickened by a lot of people in boxing that are just like scurrying to him and singing his praises when he doesn't really deserve to be praised. When I keep seeing an argument, so he makes big fights, so why should we care? Has he made big fights? Did he make Joshua Fury? Did we watch that fight? Because Tyson Fury put out a really big video that really kind of blew this open, saying just got after the phone with Daniel Kinahan. Thank you, my boy. We've just agreed the biggest heavyweight fight of all time. With Anthony Joshua. Okay, great. He made that fight. Did he? No, it hasn't even happened. So how he's not making that big fight, and he's again, I keep going back to the same thing. I don't think boxing is safe when someone like him has such a prominent role in it. And his tentacles are they're continually reaching into America. America's kind of not had it as bad as Europe. Europe is completely riddled in his image. But when you've got bullets spraying at multiple people at various, years, events that have significance for boxing, that's just not somewhere that any of us want to be around. You can take you're going to have characters in boxing who have come from drugs and things like that. If it was just drugs, I probably wouldn't be that on it. But when you're talking about shootings and murders and things like this, it's just a next level that this sport really doesn't need, and it can have bigger ramifications. I'm not sure if we went into it last time, but Eddie, in the when coronavirus was like a bigger thing,
right?
And boxing was not really looking for a handout, but I think it probably was looking for a handout. But people like Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren were kind of arguing with the government when the government was in the UK. They were supporting other sports, and I think there was a certain amount of millions of pounds that were being distributed to sports like tennis and other things to keep them kind of going, and boxing didn't get a penny. And they were both quite vocal about, boxing should get a penny. I can't remember if I tweeted at them or I just tweeted saying maybe boxing would get a penny from the government if the last time the government were talking about boxing wasn't because you guys helped bring Daniel Kinahan into the sport. Don't want to criticize them too much because it's kind of hard not to deal with him. My focus is always on Daniel Kinahan rather than promoters and fighters that might be signed to him and things like this. But you can't go around thinking, oh, let's get a handout from the government, when literally I've spoken to politicians in the UK and in Ireland, and they're aware of Kinahan, but I'm trying to say to them, boxing can't govern itself in the UK. What can the government do? Ultimately, the government can do anything. There's so many things. There's so many. The structure here is so impotent to actually deal with this issue that I just hope there isn't any more, bullet spraying. It hasn't happened for a few years, but while Daniel Kinahan's operating in the sport, how safe really is the sport is my question I'll continually go back to. And it just seems like, these tweets that are coming back to these tweets and, these social media pictures that people like Darren Till tweeted one with him, with Daniel Kinahan. Sonny Edwards continually talks about him, and Sonny Edwards, he if you challenge him on something on Twitter, he'll come back at you and he'll bite you. But if you I haven't mentioned Daniel Kinahan to him, but people do, and he doesn't bite back when it comes to Daniel Kinahan. All this sort of he had a 3-hour interview. I think it was 3 hours. Was it 3 hours with James
English?
Yeah, I think, was it 3 hours? But that didn't see the light of day. Why didn't that see the light of day? What legal issue can really come about from that? And is it because the entire thing was just complete bollocks, Right. We've seen these things come out before from people close to Kinahan, or were they, a propaganda that's come out, like a rap video, a film, and some other stuff that just, it's just propaganda. It's not the real story. And if you want the real story, listen to this show, read the work of the Irish crime reporters, the sports reporters there. Sometimes I've definitely got a few leads that I'm looking into. There's more people involved in this than I'm told that we already know about. So I kind of want to get that out there if I can, just trying to get that verified by second source. And I want to get the So we were talking about Pacer offline. For anyone that doesn't know what Pacer is, it's this tool that you can sort of get updates from and search court documents, anything that's going on in the US courts. So I get alerts from a bot that I've got set up through work. So whenever Kinahan's name is mentioned in a Californian court, I'll get a little alert. Some of it, I think, from my reading, might just be like a very small amendment to one line of this quite, exhaustive court case. But I want to speak to one of the lawyers involved in that case and try and get the very latest in what's happening there, because there's some interesting, things going on that Kinahan might need to respond to, or has responded to, and might need, we'll get more information of the realities or their what they say are the realities of the ongoing court case between Heredia Boxing Management and NTK Global and Daniel Kinahan.
Right. Yeah, it's been a lot of developments the last couple of days in regards to him and Probellum and that whole situation. And then, I feel, and you tell me if you agree or not, Al, but he's like slowly increasing the level of, his visuals online and in general. Like he's letting these photos out that he, with fighters or with that government official, or he's slowly opening that window into his life. And like you said, these aren't by accident. He does this on purpose. He controls that narrative. Like, no picture. I believe you said the first time you were on that there's like no picture that gets out of him without his knowledge or approval. So it's like slowly, I feel like we're getting more and more of that as time goes on.
Yeah, no, for me, kind of question why. What's usually, I think maybe it's to do with to bury some unwelcome news that he might want to get he doesn't mind the press of like, oh, I was just pictured with Darren Till and it looked like I had a bulletproof vest. That was one photo that was being talked about in some sections of the media, hardly any, but certainly not as much in boxing media. And it's the timing. I can't remember if it was that photo, but there was definitely a timing of a photo he had someone put out. And it just seemed to coincide with the news of the default, so that he was in default with this court case that I just mentioned. So just, I don't know why now, with all this sort of push to either be seen to be further legitimizing himself in boxing, or having these people legitimizing him on their behalf.
Right.
It always seems like there's a reason, I'm told his social media, if you got a text, right, or a call from Daniel Kinahan saying, take that photo down, people would take it down.
Right. Yeah.
So yes, sir, very quickly.
Yeah. I mean, if you're already, this was like a really like haunting quote that somebody gave me a while back. And they said, look, once you're in bed with him, that's it. Once you start a relationship with him, he's not the sort of person that would allow you to end that relationship. He ends the relationship with you. It's always on his terms. So all these sort of WBC boss Mauricio Solomon, I'm not sure if he'd really want to, he's got this government official seemingly on board, but these are all relationships he's nurturing somehow. And with the Mauricio Solomon one, NTK Global, run by Bob Yalen. Bob Yalen's worked with the WBC according to his LinkedIn, from the year 2000 to 2018. So there's links there, dotted links. But yeah, it's all, from what I've always been told, it's always carefully orchestrated. Daniel Kinahan's got an ego. He wants to be front and center. How visible he can really be is kind of restricted on the fact that he seemingly can't leave Dubai, for instance, to go to a Tyson Fury Deontay Wilder show in Las Vegas, because the law enforcement here are apparently after him, or very interested in. He can't go and promote a show in the UK especially Ireland, because as soon as he touches down in an airplane, they would be questioning him straight away.
Right.
So how much can he really do from Dubai? But he's doing a hell of a lot. He's kind of like, we're talking about him right now, and there's quite a few boxing companies who are, Probellum can deny it, but there's, this government official in Pakistan thinks he just met Probellum, and Daniel Kinahan's there. He's shaking his hand pretty much. WBC boss Mauricio Solomon just went to Dubai. He's not really that big of a player in this particular story, but Rick Glazer on Twitter keeps on talking about being on holiday in Dubai. Whenever somebody mentions they're in Dubai, it's just a red flag that, why are you in Dubai on business in boxing? There's one person there who would want to meet you, and it's quite clearly, Daniel Kinahan wants to go and say hello or have you come in. And yeah, once you start a relationship with him, I've always been told it would be difficult, if not impossible, for you to end that relationship. It will be him that ends that relationship.
Yeah. These new developments, they keep coming in that whole situation. Probellum, MTK, Kinahan, and he's got the lawsuit in here in California, obviously, and then he's got the problems in Ireland and all over, and DEA and FBI over here in the United States. So it's a lot of moving parts here, and it looks like just certain things. It keeps evolving as the days and weeks progress forward. But Al, we've had you on for quite a while today, so we definitely appreciate your valuable time. We get a lot of DMs and emails from listeners, especially after your first time on here. They appreciate everything we just talked about. That's what they appreciate. So that's why, that's a big reason that we get you on. You're one of the few reporters that kind of tackled this whole situation kind of head on. And there's a good chunk of our listeners that do appreciate your insight into that whole debacle that's happening with him and Probellum and MTK and that whole situation. But before we finish up here, Al, go ahead and plug your work, the Insider, your social media, anything you got that you want any listeners or fans to look up. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, credit to you both, really, because I spoke to some people recently who work in one part of the media, not really the boxing writing. And I was asking, why isn't this talked about more? And they were seemingly led to believe that, not led to believe, they've been warned off covering it because of a loss of access. So they were kind of saying, like, a lot of the boxing writers are just, they were speaking on their behalf rather than me hearing it from boxing writers, but they were saying they're scared of losing access. But I haven't really lost that much access. I'm kind of, if anything, it's helped my career. I've left the UK. I'm in Vegas now. I'm covering events with way more regularity than I did before. I spoke to Josh Taylor recently. He's an MTK fighter. I haven't really lost that much access. I found Josh quite surprisingly pleasant to talk to. I was kind of saying, like, one of the so a few of my friends who like boxing, they like him because he's got this they think he's the reputation wise that he would start a fight in the ring or out of the ring. It doesn't really matter. Ready to go, and I just speaking to him, it didn't, he said, yeah, I have got that in me, but I'm also a really nice guy. So I don't really buy the loss of access part too much, but it's just I've wanted to shout you both out because it takes a lot to have it on the platform, and nobody really asked me to speak about it. So it's nice to sort of say where we are now with that topic and where I kind of want to take it next. I just want to speak to the lawyers now on both sides and see what more comments I can get that kind of seemingly embroil more people into this story. But yeah, it's rare to be. These conversations happen behind the scenes. People do come up to me, at events or wherever I've been, and people want to know about Daniel Kinahan, and people want to know about Probellum, and people want to know about MTK and any other promoter or individual or company that might have a affiliation with him. These conversations happen behind closed doors. These conversations do happen. People do in boxing. This is a hot topic. But it's, this platform and your podcast, this is one of the few outlets where, we can really talk about it. But other than that, I still write about it at insider.com. That's my employer. I don't report anywhere else. I've got quite a lot of freedom to really go anywhere I want to, especially with that story. We've got lawyers in-house that can, make sure it's everything that we write is every single sentence, every single word is pretty much, fact checked. And we always, everything I've written so far on at 20,000 words has always seemingly been spot on from a legal point of view. We've had one legal threat. We just printed the threat in the end, and no lawyer from Daniel Kinan's ever got back to me ever since when I've been trying to speak to, get their side of the story and, I'll get the right of reply. But I think it looks like he's actually got 2 new lawyers in the US. So maybe we'll speak to them. But yeah, you can follow me on Alan Dawson Sport on Twitter. I've started Instagramming.
Oh, you're back on Instagram, huh?
Yeah. I think I've got the same handle there, Alan Dawson Sport, but I'm trying to do a bit more travel photos there. So if you're curious about what boxing gyms look like, or where these places are, and some nice photos of Vegas or Los Angeles, then that's where I'm going to be putting that stuff. More like, I suppose, more personal things from my point of view rather than words. Right.
Absolutely. And as we cross the finish line here, Mike, our usual to end the show, go ahead and let our listeners and followers know where they can find us and follow us.
We're at The Last Round 12 on Instagram and Twitter, and be sure to join us next week. We'll be reviewing the Kiko Martinez and Josh Warrington fight, and I'm pretty sure there's nothing to preview. April 2nd, I don't think there's any fights. I think we have a rare week off.
Yeah. I mean, there's always fights somewhere, but significant, bigger platform fights. That's probably what you're talking about. But there's always fights all over the world, that we can touch on. We might not know who they are, but there's fights. There's definitely some fights. So for our guest of the weekend, Al Dawson of The Insider, from my co-host Michael Shepard, I'm Danny Z. This is The Last Round.
Thanks for supporting and listening to the show. Follow us at The Last Round 12 on social media. Rate, review, and subscribe. This is The Last Round